Previously on the Tudors.
I demand to know whose subjects are you?
The Pope's or mine? Here is the submission of the clergy to your Majesty's will.
The church is broken.
If I could weep, Sir Thomas, I would weep tears of blood.
His Majesty clearly thinks that you are destined for better things, which is why he has appointed you his special envoy to the court of the Emperor.
I've received a letter from our friend Cranmer. In Nuremberg, clergy are allowed to marry, and Mr. Cranmer has taken full advantage of that fact.
Lady Elizabeth.
What do you want?
You know what I want.
Are you really going to marry Mrs. Boleyn? I have it on very good authority that she and Thomas Wyatt were once lovers.
She denies it.
Well, she would, wouldn't she?
I said she denies it.
What of this girl, the King's whore? Why doesn't someone just get rid of her?
If you succeed, you will be the beloved of God, of His Holiness, and of the Emperor.
There are rumors your Grace secretly supports the Queen. So what happened to you?
I grew up.
I come to offer my resignation from my post as Chancellor. I promise that I will never speak publicly of your Majesty's great matter.
I will hold you to that promise.
We have a duty still to act in the interests of Christendom, whatever the cost.
I promise you that the thing I have so longed for will be
That you be gone from this place.
wherever I go, I remain his wife.
I beseech your highness not to pursue the path you seem to be taking, or you will surely follow Ahab, who married the whore Jezebel. The dogs will lick your blood.
Hi, and welcome to my video on the power of the Queen. The demonstration of that intro is to give you an example that everything that we do or everything that we watch has a potential lesson for chess, and that episode of Tudors is no exception. Queens can be very powerful, and they can be very distracting. They can be both a weakness and a strength at the same time. The actress Natalie Dormer plays the role of the Queen on the Tudors very well, and she also plays a queen twice in Game of Thrones. Now imagine on the chessboard your queen, and if you get more than one queen, it can become pretty distracting for your opponent. For a very beautiful woman to be on the board, and you can potentially distract your opponent from what you want to do. This means one thing. Is your queen going to be a perfect match for you? You have to keep in memory that your queen is your greatest strength as well as your greatest weakness. Your opponent can use your queen to hurt you, while you can use the queen's power to effect devastation on your opponent. A queen normally isn't as powerful when on its own, coming out too early in the game, and she's quite vulnerable, and you can potentially lose a very deadly weapon. Sometimes a queen is the most powerful when she does nothing at all. Her presence on the board is enough to intimidate with a potential threat. A potential tends to have greater power and more use for you than actually implementing the moves or such things, whatever you want to apply. They say the king's in charge of the game, in charge of his army, but the queen manages the king. If the queen plays her cards right, she can manipulate a king into doing whatever she wants or needs at that time. Or, if she overplays her hand, she can get herself into deep trouble. And that particular episode, in fact, is called Checkmate. Go figure. Okay, so let's go to the chessboard. Okay, so the queen is perhaps the most deadliest potential weapon that you have on the board. No offense, but in the game, the queen, even though it's a woman, is a weapon, a tool, a means to an end. They can move anywhere in any direction as long as the pieces are not in the way, and they can't jump over pieces like knights can. This you know, this is basic stuff. A queen on its own can do nothing. Again, I know what I'm saying contradicts, but both are true. A queen on its own, doing nothing, has a potential threat, but a queen in the open on its own is very vulnerable and very bad. For example, a bad opening to play, which some people often do, if you're a real beginner, bishop out here, oh no, hang on one second. Let me reset that. You can do that, but there's a better one. It's a different variation. Most beginners, do this. Bringing the queen out way too early, and all it does is attack a pawn in the middle, and it looks nice to a beginner because they see if they push the pawn forward, they can just take the pawn, give check, win the rook, potentially. But black, an experienced player, is not going to do that. He knows better than to push that pawn forward. The queen is just going to get chased all over the board, and black's queen hasn't moved, and she already has like 4 squares that she can controls just by that one pawn move. And the difference in the value of the queen on the board, in the position of the two, you can see quite clearly. Right here, red's queen or black's queen is more powerful because it hasn't moved, even though white's queen is attacking. So, if as black, I know better than to take that. So, white goes ahead and takes the pawn, gives check. Black goes, okay, so what? Here's my bishop. Now what are you going to do? You've wasted 2 moves while black's ahead in development. And black's looking really stronger. And white's nowhere to be found. Now, a decent opening to keep your queen strong, like the Sicilian. Just doing a quick few moves. I mean, this is a typical opening. This is Sicilian opening, which is pretty standard. And already you can tell the difference in quality of the white queen compared to black's. Black's queen, it's only got 3 squares open for it to go to, and any of the squares really doesn't do that much. However, white's queen protects the knight. It's got all 4 squares to go to there, and 2 more squares up here that it can go to. White's queen has more potential than black's right now. So they probably would answer. Sorry, 1 second. Black would probably answer with something like this to get the more space in front of the queen. Or they would have done that a6 to complete the opening. But the difference in position of the queen affects the power of the queen. And the queen on its own does nothing. A queen is very much more stronger when it's supported. Even with the fool's mate, and this is what I was originally going to show you, even with the fool's mate, the only reason why this is strong because the queen's attack is supported by the bishop. So the queen is very powerful when used correctly. And right now this is a classic example of where the opponent's going to be focusing on your queen. For a beginner, they're going to be worried about the queen, and they will be responding to the threat of checkmate rather than planning on carry on with their own plan. Typical move, you can spin the knight out, stop it. So that's that. Most people know how to end the game with a checkmate on the king. With the king and queen versus king. And again, it won't let me do it. Again, this would be stalemate, and if it was black's move, this would be stalemate. Forget those pieces. But again, the king is working with the queen to make it stronger. And the next move is either queen, if there was no pieces, queen there, or queen in front of the king for checkmate. And that essentially applies to all pieces on the board. It works better when you're working as a team. It took her father and her family to get her into power on shooters, and it took her and other people supporting her to get in power even on Game of Thrones. She didn't do it on her own. She wasn't in a position to have power unless she had support. So you've always got to make sure that your valuable piece, the queen, has the support she needs to be able to do her job. Again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it needs repeating. Now, another potential, this is going to look pretty odd. You're in the middle of a game, and the queen's in the corner. Black's already castled. Like you're getting into a middle game. Okay, so the queen's in the corner. It really, from the naked eye point of view, it doesn't look that much, it doesn't look like there's that much threat, but there is. If you think about it, this pawn is threatened by the knight and potentially by the bishop and the queen. The only thing that's in the way is the knight. And the only thing in the way of causing serious damage is the pawn. So if it was white's move to play, white can do this, having a discovered attack. Again, the potential is sometimes greater than the actually carrying out the plan. If you just take the pawn, the threat is over. The potential threat is over. If you keep the potential threat going, you keep the opponent's mind occupied. Right now, as black, you've got to think about the knight, the bishop, and the queen in the corner. The queen has more influence and power when not seen at all. She has more control of what the king does, what the king eats, what the king sees, including mistresses. A perfect example in the show, she knew the king was gonna like other women, so she put a woman that she would rather have him to be with than a potential threat. She picked a less prettier woman for him to be than a more intelligent woman and more beautiful looking than herself. So she didn't think she would be replaced by that woman, and in the end she wasn't, because she was rather plump. So this is pretty much like this. This is the chess version of that. The queen is going after the king, but white queen doesn't want black to see what the queen is doing until it's too late. So right now, the knight's been attacked. Knight takes, and you could easily take back with the pawn in the middle, but you don't have to do it yet. And we've got a tremendous force building up. We've got the knight that can come out onto this side. And right now black's development is pretty bad. This is a pretty bad example. Well, no, it's not. But it's just an example. Black's queen has some powers still. She has 5 potential squares to help stop the fight. So, as white, the other potential woman, the potential threat is the black queen. So, I can see if I take the knight back, she's just going to bring the queen out, or come out to where it's going to be bad. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that piece. Now, black. Okay, no, that's pretty bad. I overlooked. The knight can just go back and it stops. So, let's go back 1 second. So let's see. We're going to have to take piece back with the Okay, so you see what I mean though. You got the long potential threat. You just gotta work it out better than I did. you have to take the knight back. So the knight can't go back. And you've also got the potential threat of this diagonal line opening up using the bishop. So if black does now play the queen forward, you can go, yeah, that's right. You can now do this. Now black's in trouble. He's not going to be able to stop the mate unless he's careful. Black has to respond by putting the queen to h6. Or you can't go here because the bishop would take, but he has to protect that pawn because I've got two pieces attacking it and the king can't take back. For example, if the queen went back here, well, there is an option. If the queen goes back here, pawn takes, black could just push the pawn up and interrupt the communication between the piece and the queen and that. The other option that is available let's see. Okay. Well, normally the queen is not. The whole point of this little exercise was just to show you that the queen, which is normally more effective in the middle, can also be effective in the corner too. It can make this diagonal very deadly and very uncomfortable for the opposition. Just like if it was this way around, then it would be obvious. Queen takes the pawn and it's checkmate. So, the whole point of this lesson, the moral of the story basically, is queens on the board are very distracting for obvious reasons. They use their looks, charms, and power to affect the gameplay. And the person that is able to use her skills and talent in combination with the rest of the army is going to win. You want to be careful that you don't rely on her too much if you have to sacrifice her to win. Like if you want to trade queens and get a new one by pushing a pawn to the end and getting a different queen, that is something that you got to be able to do. You got to be able to play without the queen as well. It's something that's not always easy to do. It throws people off their game. This is something that I will cover next time on how to adapt your play when you lose your strongest piece. Right now, don't get blindsided by the looks or the eyes or the stare. Realize that the queen, even though if it doesn't move for most of the game, she has a lot of power and a lot of influence and a lot of potential force and a lot of potential opportunities, which is what is key to winning a game. Because while you maintain that potential, the opponent has to keep that in mind. And that's just one more thing your opponent has to think about. Where can she go? Where can she do the most harm? Where is the most likely place that you're going to use it? When are you going to use it? Why hasn't he moved her yet? Why isn't he doing this with her? Why is he moving the queen there? Why is the queen sitting back doing nothing? All of those things they will concentrate on and think about. And this is why you gotta get used to playing with a queen, but don't bring her out gun-ho at the start, because that's when she's most weakest. Don't overplay your hand. Alright, that's the lesson. I hope you enjoy it.